Okay, Quinn, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, excellent.
Good. Thank you.
Was only designed for one person, but I think we can fit. We're gonna try it if she shows. Are we ready? I don't. He's.
Hey, Mayor, Lisa, can you still hear me?
I can hear you.
I cannot hear anybody talking on the podium.
You guys got to make sure and tuck into those. That doesn't sound like it.
There's your muffle.
I have it at 100%.
Yeah, Lisa, you're loud and clear, but they're just a little mumble.
It sounds it now.
Speaker.
No comments tonight. I will
Now I can hear them.
admit, our consent agenda, which consists of March 28th meetings, April the 11th meeting, April 25th meeting, and April checks. Is there any discussion on this consent agenda? If not, then I would ask for an approval. Okay, would someone like to make an approval?
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Do we have a motion? We have a second.
I second that.
We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Next item on the agenda is resolution 23-10 South Leader Model Railroad Development Agreement. Anything need to be discussed on this?
Mayor, I do have just a question about, did everybody see the email we received from a resident right there that lives right there? So is that addressed in the current? He brought up some very good points about those areas and who maintains those.
Yes, it is, in the contract itself, what it's saying is, the park is ours. And then here is a specific portion of it that the train club has to take care of. When it's talking about, the distance from the outer rail, it is literally the track rail going out 2 feet. We've talked about even having some of the places where we're just getting minor amounts of it, that, you know, additional, that we would still have that area taken care of by the train club. So all of it is under still the city's responsibility to take care of, except when it's on the ballast. So wherever the gravel is down at. So we looked at actually putting in some mowing strip around the entire thing to make a very defined space between the two. But the cost on that is just very, very expensive as compared to just putting it into the contract. Here's what you need to take care of. So, yeah, multiple.
Going back on that, the one area you brought up and that maybe someone else can address it too, there's that triangular piece between. That Public Works only brought that up because then they'd have to get their mowers over the top of that. That's way more than the 2 feet outside of it, but it's that triangular piece between that really needs to be either the train clubs. Or we gotta have a way to get mowers back and forth.
He's located where?
Yeah.
Yeah, by the drain, it's that triangle piece between all the tracks.
We did spray that.
Yeah, I know you're spraying it, it's just where it addresses, you're only maintaining 2 feet out, that was his concern, to make sure that everything was included, that we can't.
Triangle,
Some of the
triangle,
That sounds
we sprayed that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In here,
Yeah,
Yeah,
So-
oh, yeah.
that's a triangle.
Mhm.
yeah, so the idea behind it is that this is actually a contract, so it's going to go forward with everything, so. We're going to eventually develop that part of the park. Eventually, there's gonna be grass over there, there's gonna be all kinds of different things on it. Their responsibility throughout the entire park, regardless of where they put the track, is going to be that 2 feet on each side. And that's what we're trying to go with, so right now, the city's responsibility is still everything that is on the park side of it. Just because that triangle was created there, it doesn't mean that suddenly they have to take care of all the property between that. Is it kind of a pain? Yeah, it is, but they're taking care of it. But I didn't think for the contract, it should be put in there where as soon as that park is developed, then we have to go back and change the contract to match that. So it was just trying to be all inclusive. If it doesn't seem that way, or if it's missing something, please. We can always add or change or whatever we need to it.
And I'm okay with that, it's got track on all 3 sides of the triangle, so it's never gonna be,
Yeah.
it's never going to be something that's part of it, it's gonna be in their triangle, stuff in between tracks that they gotta somehow get mowers across the tracks.
That was the problem is that, before, when Public Works was maintaining this, members of the train club had said that the Public Works Department is damaging the track,
Yeah.
so then the city needs to repair the track. I don't know how else we're supposed to get over there.
Well, and if that's what we want, we can look at doing an all gravel situation, so if there's gravel placed in between it. And we require that, then yeah, we can do it. Do you see what I'm saying? So like over on the little rail, yard, if you will, where we've got the gravel that's on it, and that's where they can store all their equipment. All of that gravel in the contract spells out, they have to take care of it. We can add something like that to it. Where they have to take care of all of the gravel part that does not have access.
That was just the only one that has been brought up several times, and I never thought about it until we had this email and it reminded me of that. And we talked about it before with Mr. Grubb and a few other people about that in the past.
Joel, if you wanted us to make that accessible, so you wouldn't have to have a gravel island, we could put a crossing there, so that you could drive your lawnmowers across the track. The crossing's pretty easy.
Yeah.
I don't know. Can you tell me?
No,
It's pretty significant.
Would it be as simple as adding language, areas that are inaccessible for public works because of the train track?
I think so.
Pretty much.
I don't know how large that area is, but it's in between all of the tracks, so I think it would be best for that to become part of the train club's responsibility to care for that.
And I think you guys would probably want that so that there wouldn't be equipment crossing over those tracks. So
So in section 1.5.1 C, where it defines the 2 feet, we could add the language of areas inaccessible by public works due to the train tracks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also this other, I'm just gonna pull up that other photo too. Because it states 2 feet from the edge of the rail. Right, 2 feet out from the edge of the rail. So in this photo here. You can see about where 2 feet goes. So this other area right here, this is in Public Works. there's kind of a ledge there. So is that about 2 feet to where that ledge is? I'm trying to
Are you
gauge
talking
it.
about our retaining wall?
Well,
Or-
Yeah.
Right
That's
here.
right there.
there's a
This
little
is just-
ledge at the edge of the
Oh,
ballast.
We do actually have,
I think it's on the north side.
yeah,
Yeah,
That's on the north side and the track is like 4 or 5 feet from the fence or property lines. And I think that we discussed, I think with Mr. Grubb, that train company in that area, the train club would just maintain everything to the fence.
right, the contract actually says that it would not be less than 2 feet. So anything that is going all the way to the wall, instead of having the city again come into it.
so do we need to specifically state that it needs to go to the retaining wall also?
Jamie?
There you
Do-
go.
On the,
On the north side, do we need to have that, it's currently written as no less than 2 feet, but do we need to have it state that it needs to go to the retaining wall or whatever barrier that it leads up against?
So forgive me for punting on that, but I don't know the area as well as you guys do physically what it looks like. Whatever you're comfortable with, that would help you not have any dispute over what that means. What's happening to the agreement?
I think-
Err on the side of being more specific, I guess.
The city came in and laid down fabric and put in
Right.
mulch.
right,
So the city's taking that responsibility,
Yeah.
and we just kind of figured after that,
you'd knock it down with
we,
a weed.
we just keep after it.
Or which part are we specifically talking about?
So right after the,
I think it's mostly down there. North side and-
The north side that it leads up with those properties that have retaining.
Yeah, there was talk originally of actually moving our truck closer and maintaining it to that wall.
Yeah,
now, we do have this also on the east side where the white fence is over there, where the trail, or the track comes close to that side as well.
But that's where the shrubs were that were pulled out by the city.
Yeah. Yeah. So is that something we need to add? It's not difficult to put it in.
to just be, to clarify.
Yeah,
And then there's not this gray area, that's been part of the issue, I feel like, so it just have a clear line of what that means.
trying to look through, because as the mayor was saying, we actually did discuss that and have that, I thought, in here originally, but I don't see it in here, so I don't know whether I left it out or whether got it out there.
Like, well, it's unacceptable where it is.
I think that's what I was gonna say, it's kind of covered, that's what I thought.
So just a follow-up question, and then Train Club commented about possibly moving the track closer to that barrier wall or the side wall. If they do that, or when they do that, what type of adjustment does that make to the grass that's currently, but the edge of the grass will now be further away from the track? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
On that north side, if they move it to be 2-3 feet away from the wall, then do we get more grass on the city? How's that all gonna work? Or I can't hear anybody if they're responding.
What was that? Quinn?
Oh, I couldn't hear anybody talking. I didn't know if they were responding or not.
Sorry, Quinn, I'm sorry, I can't imagine the city going in and putting grass in right there and adjusting sprinklers. Or that if they choose to move that trail, the track, excuse me.
Well, that's part of the new track, they just relayed, so I
Yeah,
don't
that's what.
think they're gonna be relaying that, are you?
That's all new track, and
Yeah.
we put it where the city told us to put it, so.
Well, I think it's there.
That's there for a while, I think.
Yeah, I'm not pushing that you move it, but somebody commented tonight that you had talked about moving it.
Not that track, it's already done.
So if we just, put in there, let's see. Areas inaccessible, including along fence line. That's specific,
So, but inaccessible.
Including small areas. Between track and property lines, something like that.
I think that's just an inaccessible area for.
To me, it is.
For sure.
So
If you're getting that.
the only thing that I would add to that is, or any place that the club has put down gravel. So if they do have an area like the triangle one or anything like, the loading and unloading, if you guys are covering that with gravel, as part of it, whether it's in between track or however far it goes on it, that once they put down the gravel, they're also saying that they accept the responsibility of keeping that weed free. Would that work, Jamie?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right,
Good things. Anything else?
any other discussion? Okay, let's have a motion on this then.
Okay, see if I can do this one with what I've got written down. Mayor, I move to approve resolution 23-10, the South Weaver Model Railroad Club Agreement. With the following amendment, 1.5.1 C, add inaccessible areas and areas train club has placed gravel. I don't know, there's gotta be a better way for your reads to say that.
What I have written down is to require maintenance in areas inaccessible to the city because of track, including small areas between the track and the property or fence lines, and any areas where the club has placed gravel.
Yeah, I like mine better.
I'm gonna die on that.
Thank you, Gary.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll second it. Sorry, I lost sound again. Seems like when I talk, I lose sound.
We need a motion, Quinn, do you,
Or,
or a vote, we need. to
Okay,
vote.
I'm a yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the motion carries. Our next item is resolution 23-14, tentative budget and set public hearing. We need an adoption on this tentative budget, what we're looking for tonight. No discussion on this, just an adoption of the budget. We'll have the next couple of weeks to look at changes we may want to make at our next meeting on the 23rd. Then we may have our public hearing, that would be the time that we would have discussions on the tentative budget. So tonight, we're just looking for an adoption of this budget.
Mayor, I make a motion, we approve resolution 23-15, adoption of tentative budget.
14,
Oh,
23, 15.
sorry, it says 15 in the packet. Okay.
What is it?
Resolution 23-14, tentative budget and set public hearing date,
May 20.
May 23rd, 2023.
Second.
Here we have a motion and a second, so the roll call vote from Councilman Dillon.
Aye.
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 I,
Okay, thank you. Motion carries. Next resolution 23-15 municipal election polling places. Any comments or discussions on that?
Mayor,
Yes,
the reason that I put a copy of that on your plans there is because they added Fruit Heights although it won't be available for the primary, because they will not be holding a primary. In order for us not have to do this again for the general, I've added it through height.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay. Want to make a motion on this resolution?
Mayor, I make a motion on resolution 23 I'll move to approve resolution 23-15 municipal election polling places with the addition of Coconut City Hall.
And we have a motion.
Second.
And the second, in with the roll call vote by Councilman Halverson.
Aye.
I,
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you very much. Motion carries. Next item is discussion on Cherry Farm Park field overhaul. We're coming to the point that we're going to get this overhaul taken care of. It's been long overdue and it'll be great for the city. So you want to have any discussion on this?
Oh, sorry, this is just for the infield mix and trimming of the
Yes.
infield, though, correct?
Yes.
my only question is at what point, once approved, how soon could they start? Are they giving us a time frame?
They're gonna start right away. Yeah, they'd be out there within a few weeks from what I understand.
Anything else? We need to have an approval on this.
Well, it goes above what was currently budgeted, correct? By accountant.
15,000 is the budget. It was amended, and when we amended the budget to add
Oh, okay.
the additional 5,000,
That's right.
knowing that the quote was higher.
Yeah, okay.
Pretty good.
We're good, I think.
Okay, Mayor, I make a motion to approve Cherry Farms field overhaul for $11,956.
Here we have a motion. Do we have a second on this?
Second,
You do have a second. We'll begin with the roll call vote by Councilman Dales.
Aye.
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 Okay. We can try to do that. Like,
that's fantastic.
that's fantastic.
And that's what the engineer.
Yeah, see, it's not just me.
It reminds me, it reminds me of the joke. It's, you know what, one Stephanie C to the other, Stephanie C,
What?
we're on a roll. Like. Okay, we'll go into reports. Anyone have any new business that they would like to bring up? Okay, staff? Do anything?
Not for new business, no.
New business? What did I say, new report? Okay, let's go with our council reports, and we'll start with Councilman Hills, like to report on your committee.
Yeah, a couple of them in particular. Number one, just a reminder to everybody out there, if you haven't already seen the very, very cool videos on Facebook that shows the adult games that are going on and getting involved. This is definitely a time to get out and try some pickleball. Each one of these events will last for a couple of weeks, and then you'll have a new one come along. So I would definitely recommend trying the pickleball. That's kind of fun. Even I do that. So second, I would also like to thank the train club for coming here tonight and for working with us on this contract. It's been quite a while as we've gone through a lot of the details, and I appreciate their time in that. And then, as many of y'all may be seeing, the bike club or the bike track volunteers, I should say, because there's not a club, have already been down there working again, trying to finish that up. I've seen kids on it already using it, and I've seen a whole lot of remote control cars on there. So it's definitely getting used already for a bunch of hills. But yeah, that was it.
Thank you. Okay,
Did we hit a new record on our Facebook Live videos coming from feet? I just want to update on code committee. We finished up our initial use permits. They're going to planning commission in June. And then there are some changes that we're gonna need to do with the latest legislative changes, one with our development process and also with our road widths need to be changed, even though we just got those finished, we got to change them again. So, Jamie and Brandon will be working on that as well as Trevor. And they're already figuring out some ways that we can work with that. Not around it, with it. That's all.
okay. Thank you, Haley. Quinn, do you have anything to report?
Just an update on the gravel pit and the dust situation. Last week was one of the worst dust weeks we've had for several months. Now that we're getting into warm weather and drier weather, they really need to get back on top of their water management. So we've communicated that with them, but it was a really bad week. Also, just an update on the U of U sensors. We've been taking data from them. Their sensors are recording PM10, PM2.5, PM1. Those are the very small particles that the EPA is tracking and cause health problems. And we have not exceeded any of the limits in that. But the interesting thing is, of the 5 maximum peaks, 2 of them are from when the wind is not coming from the east, actually coming from south and west when we have storms coming through. And also that information is not correlating with any high wind event days. So we sent that information back to the University of Utah. They're going to look at the data, but a high wind day doesn't, according to their sensors, if they're functioning properly, does not correlate with a high health hazard particulate day. So it's all preliminary information, but it is information that we're going to look into. That's all I have.
Thanks, Quinn.
Thank you, Quinn. Angie?
Thank you, Mayor. We met as the Municipal Utility Committee today to discuss the Public Works building, and we're at a good place. I feel pretty good about it. So, long story short, we should be able to have a packet ready to go out and get some requests for proposals in June. We hopefully get some site work done this fall. And we'll have more information on that as we get more information.
Thanks.
Yep, that's it, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Angie.
Do you want to elaborate on our next steps?
Yeah, I think that's a good thing. Because we're going to be getting the bid package ready, as Angie said. We're also going to be doing the bonding process kind of as a double barrel approach. So both things will need to be happening simultaneously. So in June, there will be a couple of specific steps that will be taking place for the bonding process. One of which will be establishing what's called a local building authority. It's the mechanism for doing this type of bond when it's not just one funding source. And in this case, because Public Works is across all types of enterprise funds and general fund, that there are elements from all of those. The local building authority is the appropriate tool that's at the city's disposal in order to bond. And so because of that, there'll be steps to establish that local building authority, probably the first meeting of June. And then the bonding process, kind of kicking it off, the city council will establish the limit, the parameters of what they're willing to bond for. So you as a council can say, we're willing to bond X up to X dollar amount and for X number of years. And then that kicks off the bond process of actually going through to establish the interest rates, the terms of the bond, and as we then get through the construction process, the final actual amount of the bond. So you're kind of setting the cap and setting the term limits and things like that. And that's the beginning of the bonding process. So similar to some of the other projects we've done where we haven't had a bond, we've established the budget and said we want to do a project at no more than this dollar amount, go work to bring it under that. Similar philosophy, and so you just have to do that with this, what's called parameters resolution, and so those two steps will be coming forward in June for the council to take those steps. While the construction side of it and the design side of it is finalized, so that the bonding process will have kicked off. And we will be able to then hire those contractors and go do the work. The site work for the project is a type of project that we do all the time, right? The underground utilities and things like that, and so we can do that as one contract. And then the building itself can be a separate contract for the general contractor that is good at buildings. And so we'll see a contract for site work, we'll see a contract for general contractor, which will do the final design pieces and make sure that the building is exactly the way we want. And then we'll also have that bonding process happening simultaneously. Again, happy to talk about any questions that the council may have on that. We want to, work through those steps the best we can. In the meantime, we want to take the design that we have, if there's a layout and whatnot, that the committee finalized today. We'll send that out to the full council for your look and review. And then we believe that we can take that information to some contractors and hopefully get estimates for the building side of it as well. So as we get into that bonding process, we have a better idea of what the number needs to be for that, to establish that. So we're working through those steps all kind of at the same time, but the municipal utilities committee did some really heavy lifting.
So we don't have anything in this year's budget for it and next year's budget, correct?
Correct.
So the entire cost of all of this is just prep work until we get the bond.
So when we do the bond, we will also have to do a budget amendment so that we can include that within the budget, yes. We haven't been able to put that ahead of the bonding process because we didn't know those numbers.
And when we set that limit, we still won't have a fixed number, it's just a cap, and then we'll be working towards it, or we'd never get there. It's taking a long process.
To me, it's a really exciting time, right? We've talked in theory for a lot of years about this project, and now there's some real steps being taken, and having a building layout and having design work is a really major step. And now taking some of these bonding steps they're real and they're right in front of us, and that's exciting. We'll make sure that the full council has all of the information as far as what the building looks like. Again, layout was established today. Now we're going to be able to turn that into some renderings and things like that. So you'll actually be able to see what that can look like. And then we can get the cost information to go along with the bonding process. The wheels are in motion, and it feels real at this point, where before it's always been theoretical.
Okay, Blair.
Yeah, Restoration Advisory Board for Hill Air Force Base, we met last Thursday, yes it was. Seems like a long time ago. The big takeaway from that is the 5-year review, which we talked about over and over, which is an independent, they hire third parties. It's actually a fourth party, because they already have third party contractors doing the studies, but then they hire another party to do the 5-year review of what their findings are. And that is to come out which in July, and that will be a copy we provided to the city. We can put it wherever we want to, so everybody can see that review. The recent studies have shown that our plumes have been shrinking, but I requested with Python, who's our representative, they'll, in the meantime, while our water level is higher because of the groundwater, if they will test some more of our wells to see if it is still staying. And we have several wells where there's no results and they've stopped testing, but the wells are still there. Can they go back to them and start testing them and see if with the water levels coming up in the ground, if that's moving, if it's changing? And they said they would.
They would. Good.
I don't know how quick that would be,
Yeah.
but if they did say they would. So anytime this summer, I think would be a better test compared to the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So it was a shorter meeting than normal. There wasn't a lot of new updates. Piping, that, I wish Kamashiro is her last name, is our representative, and she, all of us get her emails back and forth, so. She represents very well.
Okay, thank you, Blair. Dave.
Only report that I have is, to toot the mayor's horn since he won't, right? This, you can see the results, we're getting close for this building.
I think there should be an applause for staff. Staff has put up a lot, you've done a lot to make it come in the budget too. It's been great. Yeah.
The finishing touches are still kind of out there. Obviously, the reception desk and whatnot is probably a week or so away, but we believe by our next city council meeting that we'll have the audio visual in place and some of those final touches, and it's just really exciting. I think that this is a really big deal for the city in a lot of ways, and really it's a credit to the mayor. And he told me that he wasn't gonna do anything big, and I think he deserves it anyway.
He does.
Yeah, sure. That was fantastic.
Also, Mayor, before we adjourn, Franklin had a question about the agreement, so that's why they said that.
The amendment with the non-accessible spaces. A definition of that would be nice. What exactly are we gonna be responsible for now? And does this include the area where they pull all the shrubs out? That was historically a really big mess because it was not maintained. And the method to which they put in the weed barrier and the bark was not very well done. I can see weeds being there within 6 months or less. But now it would be our responsibility.
So let me ask you a question. Would you want the city and a vehicle coming over there to take care of it?
Well, I just want to know before we sign this and agree to take care of it, what exactly are we taking care of?
Yeah. And that's the question though, is, any places that gravel gets put down, you guys will be taking.
Okay, but there's no gravel in these areas.
Right.
But the way it was worded, that still puts us responsible for that area.
Okay.
I mean, if you look, it's not really bark, it's chunks of wood and they were all dirty. And so you're going to grow weeds in that. And that's quite an expansive space. The area that we sprayed around our tracks, it's just over 3/4 of an acre. So, you know, by the time you start spraying 3/4 of an acre, that's a lot of spray. And I mean, to us it is, to you, it's not much space, but that would add quite a lot of space by adding all of that area across the north side and the east side where that bark is. And that's a lot of weeds that we'd have here for. If you guys could spray your bark, excellent. We won't have any question. And that would be okay, you know. But that's a lot of area.
So Dave, since Jamie's gone, how is that handled?
What do you mean, how is it handled?
On something that the city council has proposed.
Originally, you guys, as I understood it, the shrubs were gonna be taken care of by you originally.
We've cut them back every year.
I understand, but it's been an argument spot, it's been a sore spot. That's why the city went in and just tore them out, because the neighbors were complaining, we were complaining,
Those.
they did what they did. It actually probably made it easier.
We were responsible for the shrubs. I always thought that was a city responsibility.
Anything that was on the outside of those tracks was originally what we had talked about. A lot of it is not in writing, but that's like conversations with Grubb, with the other president.
John is no longer.
I understand that, but this right here is why we need a contract, we need it specifically, because you guys don't wanna do it.
That's why we.
And I may just change my vote. And so this is why. I mean, if it makes it inaccessible for the public works to get to it
It is,
and a pain in the butt, it's not worth it.
it's not inaccessible. They can drive right down the tracks and spray it. It's, you know.
What's the definition of inaccessible?
You have to cross your track.
They wouldn't want to trust that.
That north end that I think because you're not talking about the triangle.
No,
right?
I'm not trying
The
to.
north end is actually accessible at the east of the park. Because that whole area where we did the mulch and the weed barrier. We can just walk on that side and never cross the tracks.
Yeah.
Which I was actually wondering when we made the motion, because it's not technically inaccessible.
Can they get a vehicle over there?
I don't know about a vehicle unless you're gonna straddle the tracks.
Do you need a vehicle?
Well,
I mean, if you drive down the side of the tracks, you can spray the whole area, that's not a problem.
I feel like we need to, I mean, it's an undue burden to our public works to require them to walk there and spray.
No, they don't have to walk,
Right there.
they can drive right down the sidewalk.
Well, they're gonna be able to go down the
Oh,
sidewalk.
and spread
On the
it.
north side, they can drive right down the sidewalk and spray that,
They'd have to go on the other side of your tracks.
they wouldn't have to.
You have your tracks and then you have the space and the barrier, the
Right.
little property lines. If your track is here, the sidewalk's over here.
Yes, they can spray
You're just
across
right
it.
over the track,
Sure.
is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's easy.
I don't think that would be very effective.
Easy, so.
I don't think it'd be very effective either, for what it's worth.
Yeah, spraying over, especially with our wind condition, I don't think that would work, but I also don't see a problem with, them walking over it. I would assume that that's how they do most of their spraying. It's just walking with the big tank on their back.
I don't think so.
We have,
I don't know, but I don't think so.
we have an ATV that they have a tank on.
An ATV would fit. I think an
ATV,
ATV would fit in that
I think
area.
they have an
It's probably
ATV.
about 4 feet, maybe say.
right,
Maybe so.
right now, our cost is $2,000 a year to have that sprayed. You have another 50%, that's another $1,000 for us to maintain something that's not done well.
Is the concern just keeping the weeds down in
Yes.
that area or having to replace them? Replace the barrier and the bark and whatnot?
Just keeping the leach.
My understanding is that previous conversations had always included that, to Blair's point, it just hadn't been written down that way. But there were always a conversation of on the north side of the track to the property line was the train collector's responsibility. That's how I understand it.
North side of the track,
On the north side of the park, from that north rail to the property line was always the train clubs. On the east side, the same thing. That's how I understood.
That's the way it's been understood in the 10, 12 years that I've been talking about that. And the last 6 that I've been on council, so,
okay,
and that's why the public, where it wasn't written that way, that's why it was always an issue with Public Works, that's why it was always an issue when we would have a meeting with Train Club, I had
I think
20,
we
30
were under
meetings.
the impression that it was the city's responsibility.
Well, it just wasn't getting.
Maybe that's where the problem came in.
yeah,
But see, that was kind of the issue that we ran into when we first started this, was that there wasn't.
Exactly,
And there were a lot of he said, she said, and everything like that. That's why in the contract, it was easier just to be able to say, okay, here is their track and here's why we want 2 feet on every direction. We did talk about a few places where that would change, but something like that, where we've got the city has gone on and put down the bark and cleaned out that whole area. And I would say that's at least 4 or 5 feet. So if you've got a 5-foot area that's going all the way down there, I don't consider it a burden to be putting on our public works to do that part of the job. Because if the tracks weren't there, they would still be responsible for that. So when we were trying to define it, all we were trying to do was just outline where they
But
had to be.
because the tracks are there though, like, it's,
if the tracks weren't there, it'd be grass and they just run a mower over.
yeah, exactly.
It
They
would,
wouldn't
it'd
touch
be
the
5
ball.
minutes. And that's the difference.
When we met down there, and I know Mr. Grubb isn't in the presidency anymore of your club, but he agreed, and I was there, and said that the club would maintain that area.
And you never passed that.
Just right out, I mean, I was there.
Well, and the other president
Can I just ask
after
a
him
question?
as well.
sure.
Are you guys not willing to maintain that? Can we just jump to the question at the front here? I mean, if we say, yes, you need to maintain that, are you guys saying you're not gonna sign a contract?
No,
Not necessarily, but we definitely have concerns about maintaining that.
Okay. Do you mind coming to them? I'm just not sure if the people can hear. Have they come to the
I
sign?
think this is picking them up.
Is it big enough? Okay, so what are your concerns outside of spraying them and adding to your area? What else? What other concerns do you have?
it's time and effort on our part. I mean, our track is no wider than that. And so you're basically doubling our responsibility to maintain.
So the way I see it, we have a couple options here. We keep it as is and they say no. We change it and have Public Works cover that part, or nobody agrees and the train goes. Is that, am I understanding that all correctly?
I think, I think the other option is if we take it, the Public Works revises it so they can take care of it. I don't think they're gonna want to spray the whole thing. Can we put grass or something else down there that they can run a machine down?
I know, I've talked to members of the Public Works and they are short-staffed. They have a lot of grass they have to maintain. So to ask them to walk or finagle something right there, I just feel like that's not fair.
So I would like to hear from Public Works as far as what that would mean, and including the cost of Public Works as in this as well.
Go step out and make a phone call.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
While he's doing that, I also think it might be beneficial to create like a visual part and highlight who is responsible for what. So we don't have to just highlight, if it's in red, it's the city, if it's in yellow, it's the train park. So that visual is attached to whatever agreement we make, and if it gets changed, then we change the visual, but then we don't have to be like, well, what's inaccessible? It's just on the visual, so.
Like that.
Yeah.
Well, while he's out talking to Public Works, I'll just mention a couple of things. So up at the landfill this last week or this last month. So they've had an opportunity to them where we've been hauling all of our garbage to the regional dump, which is down out of Tooele. It's quite a distance, and we contracted that hauling. And the company that we contracted that with approached us and said, and they had just signed a new contract. They still had 2 more years to go on the contract. Says, we can't do this. We can't honor this contract any longer. The guys having some real financial problems. So he came and talked with our director up there and made a proposal that the landfill take over the hauling of the garbage to the regional dump, which and offered the district to buy his trucks and trailers. And the district went ahead and agreed to that. The board met, and so now we are in the business of hauling our garbage, which is a good thing. Number one, we picked up, he had an inventory of trucks, and all the trucks were 2021, 2020, so they were all fairly new trucks, 100,000 miles on it, but they say these trucks can go for 1 million miles. So the equipment was appraised at like little over $3 million. And the district was able to step in there and purchase that for $1.3 million.
That's great.
And they ran some numbers, the county department up there, and they said that by doing this, felt like that they would save $1 million a year by doing it on their own. And they felt like down the road, we were gonna be doing this anyway. And so it kind of jump started it for us, but it was kind of a win-win-win situation for everybody, including the contract that they had. They let him out of that. It saved him from having, bad credit against him. So he was pleased with it. Everybody was pleased with it. And so now the district is doing that. The truck drivers who come and work with the district. So I think it's going to be positive all the way around on that. The other thing, Dave and I attended a meeting last Friday, I think it was, and down at the county with the commissioner. And the discussion was on the animal shelter. It looks like they're going to be replacing that shelter up there. It's been in effect since like 1980. And they're just need more room, better facilities. And so they're going to go ahead and pass a bond and build a new building. It's gonna be about $18 million.
When are they planning to have the funds?
I think they're gonna go right ahead. They can, I think, Dave, on that animal shelter.
Yeah, so animal care and control is the county's responsibility, and cities in the county over the last couple of years have met with them and said, you know, rather than the model of the city's contract for that, they just take it as a county. And so they would just bond for it. You know, they have bonding options. They're looking at locations. They'd like to move it from where it's at. They could fit it on the current property, but it's not ideal. Yeah. So they'll most likely just do that. And what they've said as far as the financials that they've looked at this point, it would be approximately $10 per resident per property in the county
Increase.
for a year. So $10 per year. If it was a property tax increase or something like that, they're looking at ways to not do it like that, to do it just through sales tax bond or some other type of funding mechanism, but yeah, that's the project that they're looking at, and it'll most likely happen because it's just within the county's purview.
Yeah. Okay, what did you find out?
I was able to talk with Public Works leadership, and they said that the method that they use for that area, the gap between the north trail and the property line, is a backpack sprayer that they would walk. After they've laid the weed barrier, pull out the bushes, lay the weed barrier and then bark. They have done that a couple of times to try to maintain that. That's the method that they've used. And I asked point blank, are you okay with that? They said, we prefer the train club does it, but we are okay with that. We would maintain it. Okay.
Perhaps can I just clarify, I guess maybe this is hearsay a little bit, but when you say we're okay with that, do they have the staff available, and does that need to increase their expenses at all?
Since the weed barriers have been put down, they've done 2 different applications of it. So they've essentially assumed that responsibility.
Fall, correct?
Yeah. They did tell me that historically it was not their responsibility, and they felt like because it hadn't been taken care of very well, that's why they went in and ripped the bushes out and made it cleaner and clearer. And in some ways assumed that responsibility, even though historically it wasn't the city.
So, Blair, Angie, Peter, what do you guys think?
So you guys are okay with maintaining 2 feet from the track, right, on the north side? We're talking the other 2 feet, or
It's actually more like 5 feet.
it's 5 feet total.
Well, beyond.
Oh, beyond.
Beyond our responsibility.
Okay. Is it really 7 feet between the track or not?
The north side's closer than the east side.
Yeah, it is.
Well, we've at least 1 fabric sheet going all the way across it. So that's, yeah, 3 to 4, depending on which one. So.
I'll just speak my mind. I'm super frustrated about it. I've been in several train club meetings and it's very frustrating because we go back and forth and there is a lot of he said, she said, and that's the whole reason we're at this point. And we've tried to do this contract since 2019 is when we started a revision of this. So the amount of the rent that the train club is paying is very minimal. It's much less than what we originally had said we wanted to do, because we have a very small fraction of our city that are members of the train club. And even some that are not part of the city that are members of the train club. But then it affects the entire park, that affects all of the residents. So it's really hard for me to sit in a meeting and go back and forth about whose responsibility. This is a great opportunity for the train club, and in my experience, it's caused a lot of contention back and forth between train club and city employees. And I don't know at what point do we say, we don't need this anymore. It's a wonderful amenity when it's run properly and when everything's maintained. But up to this point, we've had so much discussion and argument about it that I'm to my point that I say, I'm done arguing about this. It's not worth it for me.
We're
I
just
feel like
trying to
that's what
reduce,
you're doing.
we're just trying to reach the resolution. We don't want to burden the city anymore, and we're not arguing about who's responsible for what, we're just trying to get a definition of who's responsible for what. You know, if your big concern is labor, which is what I'm getting from the two of you, then we would be willing to spray that area if you wanted to furnish the spray. Cost of spray is quite a bit, especially when you start getting into acres. And, you know, we could spray it. The big question is the maintenance. I mean, you put down barrier and you put down those wood chunks. And I'm not sure it's gonna live a long time. You know what I mean? We'll spray it, keep the weeds down. But what happens when that barrier breaks down and you start getting a mess over there again? Is that gonna be our responsibility again?
That's a great question.
That's why we're here. You know, we're not
That's why I
arguing.
tried to make a definition very clear. That's why we went over this for over an hour at our last city council meeting. Because I wanted it very clear. Because we're exactly where we have been with every train club meeting I've attended, is now that there's a point of contention, but whose is this and whose is this?
It's not
So I
contention.
appreciate Haley's suggestion to put it color coded,
Sure.
but I'm afraid that we're gonna be back here again in another, next review period of this contract. And we're gonna say, this isn't being done. And then it's gonna go back and forth. So
Once we understand what it is that we're responsible for, we'll do it. That's why we're sitting here again, is because we want to know by your general statement what that includes. You know, if it's keeping the weeds down, okay, can we come to a cooperative on that? But when it comes to the physical upkeep, is that our responsibility? Now, we're talking about the east side and the north side.
correct,
Where-
because
where they put-
that is unusable to the rest of the residents
Well, it
as
is
an
now,
amenity.
sure.
because,
Big wood
because
chucks.
the train is there. Do you see what I'm saying? People can walk that. But then it puts a burden on the rest of the city, quite frankly, because the residents have to pay for the public works to do all of that. And I understand that you guys have limited funds.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, that's one of the reasons I voted no, because I don't know at what point the train club's going to continue to maintain this. So is it fair for me as a council member to expect so much of you that you cannot maintain? And that's why I said no.
So can I bring up a couple of points though? Number one, this isn't the same presidency. So, and that is a big difference. It really is. With all the negotiations that we've sat down, they've come in and had many heated questions about what was going on. But every time as things were explained, they were 100% behind. Okay, we want to take care of that. We want to do that. We want to be able to make sure we just need it defined. And that's literally all they just came back in and did and just said, what is defined? So again, that is why I very purposely put it at 2 feet away from the rail. Because that perfectly defined, and that's what you're saying you want to do. Now, the difference though is.
That's not what I said, actually. I said we needed to define that further, and they actually agreed to the definition that we came up with before they left.
Okay,
This is
so,
the same
okay,
discussion,
hang on. So you're
a
saying.
different year, a different day, different members,
It's
same conversation, Joel.
okay, then vote no.
I did.
I don't even try talking to you. Because the actual fact is that We came in with a perfect definition of what it was, and you wanted to add more.
Because there was question as to.
And that's
who was going
fine.
to maintain that.
That's fine. The question wasn't a question of who's gonna maintain it. The contract handled that. The question was that the city was going to have to maintain it. Just like you just finished saying that that whole row, you don't think it's worth the rest of the city doing it. And that's fine to vote that way, and I get it. But what I'm trying to tell you is that don't hold the past and the presidency and the arguments and all the stuff that was going on against these guys. They're
I'm
not
not
the same.
saying
guys.
against them,
It's the same.
but I
argument.
think I have different experience and I have more experience with it.
With
So
the
you're
past-
telling me that I can't use my life experience to make. Well, you're kind of acting like it, Joel. Yeah, you are.
Let me ask you this. You're relaying the track, you haven't done the east side yet, have you?
No, we haven't.
You've just done the north side, so when you do the east side, why not move your track closer to the property line? Where you're only 2 or 3 feet away, and then that's what you're maintaining.
There's a possibility, there is one resident that maintains their bushes though.
They maintain the bushes and they have a gate and a walkway that comes out,
But that's on the property line.
so we can tear that out.
No,
We wouldn't think so.
No,
It is a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, that's
closer
what I
to the
was
side,
asking,
yes.
if you're concerned about how much is on that east side. Move your track closer to the east,
That's what I'm asking.
yeah,
What's the rent?
I think it would be,
I think we went down,
It's $200 a year.
$200 a year.
Just to throw it out there where I'm at, I feel that if, we have in writing that on that north side, because I feel like the inaccessible makes sense on that triangular piece, and you guys are on that same page. That north side, I agree, inaccessible is questionable, and I thought that before we even passed it, because you can access. I would be willing to say that if we can have in writing that you guys will spray that area, because you're already spraying 2 feet, go 3 feet more. I don't know about the cost of spray or whatever, I'll let the council discuss. But we maintain the maintenance of weed barrier and mulch every X amount of years.
Whenever you have to, you know, that's,
It'll be up to the city to decide when that time came, but as long as the weeds are being consistently sprayed by the tree part, the city, I would feel okay with the city maintaining that area every. Whatever the public works says the standards. That would be my.
we do the,
Because we can change anything on the contract. Remember, this is just what I put together. And
to be honest with you, I'm still perfectly fine with the motion we made, because kills all $89.99 at IFA for a 3-gallon jug of concentrate, and I spray it on over an acre in my driveway. You can go look at it 3 or 4 times a summer. It isn't $2,000. And so,
no, that's what it costs to have it sprayed commercially.
well, don't have it sprayed commercially.
That's
Okay?
what
I mean, it isn't in there that they have to spray it commercially.
No, it's not in the contract. That is one of the things that we did ask them to do, because they haven't been able to keep the weeds up.
And I agree to that point, there's no question, but. I think we're arguing over little things, it's a little stretch of grass, I mean, acreage. For the right use of park, I think we're not asking for a lot, so.
The biggest thing, the biggest concern we had, we're not talking about, was the general maintenance of the area, not keeping the weeds down. You know, that was our concern, was the.
Your point, Blair, our previous motion saying inaccessible, I feel like it's gonna lead us down the road that we've been down, of like, well, what's inaccessible? So do you have, if we
other
needed
option-
to
The
clarify.
other option is do your map. If they don't wanna sign it now, create a
Okay.
map, bring it back,
And
have
then
it
who
free.
maintains, like as far as mulch and weeder?
We would maintain the mulch and
I
the barrier.
agree with that.
Okay, so
I
if we maintain weed barrier and mulch,
Mhm.
and they take care of the weeds and whatever that has to be. If you guys are gonna do it yourselves and it works, great. If it's not working, then you're gonna have to step it up and pay. I don't know. But the weeds have to be sprayed and cut down. we take care of mulch and weed barrier as often as we need to. Does that work?
Yeah, we agree with that.
Wayne, do you have thoughts on that?
No, I agree with that. I think I'm kind of with Blair. You know, we identify the spot. I like Haley's comment to make the map, so it's very clear. And move forward from that.
So how do we do this, Dave? So we want to revise the contract to state who maintains the weeds and the city maintains weed barrier and mulch. But also we want to add a visual of that, do I put that okay?
Yeah, you just make another motion
Okay.
and, I've got Jamie.
Is it the same
Watching
resolution?
YouTube, so, you can help us if
For the kids.
needed,
There's,
but
there's to be addendums to this thing. Can we just do it as an addendum and?
I wouldn't recommend doing it, then let's just get it right here.
Okay, so I use the same resolution number.
Yes.
Was there other changes we made to that earlier? We did, we made
Just the language that Jamie suggested.
Okay.
And then. if
Can I
you want
say,
to- Yes.
all right, so Mayor, may I make a motion?
Yes.
Okay, I make a motion to approve resolution 23-10 South Beaver Model Railroad Club with the amendments of Amy's earlier language and that the property on the north side of the train tracks, weeds will be maintained by the train club. And the weed barrier and mulch will be maintained by the city when they deem necessary,
North end.
north and east. Oh, and that we create a visual of who is responsible for the location. That work?
We can create a map.
Okay, Matt, that's what I want.
What about the east side? Did your motion include the east side or just the north?
And east side.
Okay, we have a new motion. Do we have a second? I'll second that. Okay, we have a second to the motion. We'll begin with a roll call vote. Starting with Councilman Halverson.
Aye.
No,
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carried. Thank you very much. I think we've covered everything. We'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Hey, I want a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Wait.
Thank you.